ESPN's Buster Olney thanks to All-Star Wine and Spirits. Buster, Levac's hurting today, man.
Yeah, it was a tough night.
Well, that's not it. Oh, go ahead.
It was a tough night. It was tough for me.
But were you really that surprised? I mean, I feel I'm going to turn into a therapist here, but, I mean, when you really looked at that team and how they'd hit down the stretch and the fact that they were facing another left-hander who was going to shut them down, were you really that surprised, A? And B, will you not agree with me that this was definitely a year of progress for the organization? Their farm system's getting better. They held on to their prospects. They're another year closer to some of these onerous contracts coming off the books. And you know what? They're going to be a better team next year.
I guess the only thing was that the first two innings, they worked the count against him. He looked like he didn't have enough control, Dallas Keuchel, that is. I thought that they had him. I thought that if they kept doing that, he'd be out in 4, and they would just tear apart that bullpen. But no, I was really wrong.
Well, I do wonder, in fairness to the Yankees on this end, I do think that if you were to just look in pure volume of which team got more calls on pitches out of the zone in that game, and I don't mean to use this as an excuse because Dallas Keuchel and his catcher Jason Castro did a great job taking advantage of Eric Cooper, the home plate umpire's strike zone, but I don't think there's any doubt that the Yankees didn't get nearly as many strike calls, vice versa, when they were at the plate than the Astros did. Now, in fact, it's interesting. Today I actually spoke to some different people at the team level about that game last night, and the conversation was if in the off season the general managers discuss some sort of an automated strike zone in the future, that'll be one of the games that they'll probably raise up and they'll show videotape of and say, how does this happen that you can have so many calls in a game seemingly missed?
Yep, use the K-Box. Buster Olney with Armin and Levac. Did the Yankees ever have a game plan of small ball, Buster?
Well, I don't know if they necessarily felt like that they were equipped to do that.
Okay.
When we were in our meeting with Joe Girardi before the game, I think someone asked him along the lines of, you think looking to steal? And he said, well, with some guys, he said, then we've got other guys here probably slower than some of you all. And that's the reality of their lineup that they had, especially given how poorly Gardner and Ellsbury have been playing. I mean, you're talking about, since the All-Star break, not including the playoff game last night, Brett Gardner hit 206. Jacoby Ellsbury hit 220. And that offense, to me, we can talk all we want about right-handed lack of right-handed hitting, which is legit. But the biggest problem with their offense in the second half and down the stretch was those two guys disappeared.
So Chris Young over Jacoby Ellsbury before the game, did you agree with that call?
I did. I actually thought, in my opinion, obviously means so much less, and I have less information than Joe Girardi does. I was surprised that they didn't start John Ryan Murphy, their second catcher, because he's a right-handed hitter as well. I think when you go into a game against someone with acute splits like that, where his opponent's batting average was 50 points higher for right-handed hitters than left-handed hitters, I think you have to make adjustments, especially with how McCann, Jacoby Ellsbury, et cetera, have been struggling. I would have run out every right-handed hitter I had in the lineup to try to do something different because, my goodness, they were so bad down the stretch. And, I mean, I was surprised, for example, when they started Brett Gardner over Jacoby Ellsbury because the at-bats that I'd seen from Gardner were so terrible, and then last night they were even worse.
Buster, 10 years from now, how will the 2015 Yankees be remembered?
Well, I mean, here's the reality. When you have an organization that's won 27 world championships, even though George Steinbrenner isn't around, the Steinbrenner doctrine will forever remain. And Levac knows this in his heart. If you have a season in which you do not win the World Series, especially a year in which you reach the postseason, win the World Series, it's regarded as a failure. That was absolutely the way it was under George Steinbrenner, and it'll be the way it is because I think the fans have essentially taken that on as their doctrine. And so Levac, being as big of a Yankee fan as he is, knows that when you lose a game like that last night, even if they played the American League Championship Series, he would have been disappointed with the end result.
No, absolutely. Like when Armin asked me earlier, I said they won't be remembered.
Right. That's exactly right.
Now, you're in Pittsburgh now, but after tonight, you're headed to L.A., so let's talk about the New York baseball team that is still playing. What are you looking for out of this Mets-Dodgers series?
First off, can the Mets dent Clayton Kershaw and Zach Greinke? I mean, let's face it, at some point, if you're going to win this series, because those two guys are going to start at least 3 of the games in the series, it's possible they'll start 4, depending on how they want to play it. And the Mets are going to have to find a way to try to generate something. And let's face it, because of what happened in September, because of what happened yesterday, there's going to be so much focus on Matt Harvey. And all of it will go away if he goes out in Game 3 and he completely dominates and he's part of a Mets rotation that beats the Dodgers. But if he pitches poorly and the Mets are eliminated quickly, this is a conversation that's going to carry on into the offseason, to the point that I've told you guys before that I do think the Mets are going to trade Matt Harvey at some point. I think it's more likely after 2016. But if he has a bad game here and the papers are filled with stories all winter about what a disaster he was and how everything changed, and clubhouse sources are saying, they weren't happy with how this played out, then I wouldn't be surprised if we find out that, in fact, when they call other teams, they might, say something along the lines of, look, we have a really talented young right-hander. If you happen to want to make an offer for a Matt Harvey, what would you give us? And at least test the waters, because of how this is all set up. Everything that's happened to this point, I think we're going to remember it through the prism of what we see from the Mets and their results in the next 10 days.
So you're saying future Yankee Matt Harvey?
Stop.
Boy. Oh, my. I don't think so. I think that I would be surprised if Matt Harvey winds up with the Yankees.
Buster, the way the Mets handled the Matt Harvey situation yesterday, do we classify that as the Mets being the Mets?
I thought they handled it exactly right.
Okay.
Look, it's not common for players to miss a mandatory workout. It just doesn't happen. All the players live in the greater New York area. Probably some of them had to drive through tunnels. Some had to come from New Jersey, like Matt Harvey. And you know what? They're on time. In fact, I can't remember a time when, in the years of covering the Yankees in the postseason, I was trying to remember yesterday, was there a time when I remember a player showing up late for a workout? I just don't remember that. It doesn't happen. And so what you had was, an annoyed Sandy Alderson. You had Terry Collins say he's going to be fined, but then making the point, look, it's not college football. You're not going to pull him out of the first quarter in the game to reprimand him. And I do think that there was some level of annoyance reflected in the words of David Wright, where, he essentially said, you know what, I'm focused on the guys who are here, and I love David Wright. And I think this is the sort of thing you do when you start to get annoyed. I know this because, I'm married, I have kids, and you say things like this. You say, I'm focused on what's here, which is a passive-aggressive way of saying you should be here.
You're in Pittsburgh, a great pitching matchup, Jake Arrieta, Garrett Cole. Who's under more pressure tonight in that matchup?
Garrett Cole. I think so. And look, Jake Arrieta has been built up now to the point where you almost expect him to be the one going out there with a mask and a cape. But he's been so good, and he's so relaxed, and he has such a strong sense of himself. I don't think he's going to feel any pressure. I was thinking about looking at the numbers that he's generated and trying to couch him in a different way. Guys, he's allowed 2 home runs in the last 113 days. He's allowed 4 earned runs in the last 9 weeks. The last time he allowed multiple runs in an inning was July 30th. Okay, we have never seen a pitcher this good for this extended period of time. Not Pedro Martinez, not Roger Clemens, and Jake Arrieta is feeling it. And so, absolutely, I think the pressure's on Garrett Cole because he's at least got to go 0 for 0 against Arrieta tonight. And in my conversation with Chris Stewart, the former Yankee catcher, is now the backup catcher for the Pirates, he told me that the best thing that he saw an improvement in Garrett Cole this year was he's handled his emotions better during the game. And you'll see him step off behind the mound and collect himself and get back in the moment. My goodness, he's going to have to do that tonight.
Buster, the broadcast last night was phenomenal. From Jessica Mendoza to Chris Archer to you getting dunked with champagne by Carlos Correa at the end of the game. We'll be watching you tonight in Pittsburgh. We can't wait to talk to you next week since you're covering this L.A. Mets series. And enjoy the postseason, my friend.
Well, I appreciate it, guys. And stop talking up Chris Archer. As I told him last night, it's just unfair that one human being can have that many talents, right?
Fair. It's a fair point.
252 strikeouts. He's going to be taking a business course at Harvard. He could be a general manager if he decides he doesn't want to run for president someday.
He was smooth, man. I'll vote for him right now.
Oh, here we go.
There you go.
Buster, you the man. Enjoy the game tonight.
Enjoy the game.
Thanks, guys.